Oh, let's hope that everything is running smoothly now. Going to wait for a second, but we already have a couple of tracks in here for me to listen to. I'll have to scroll back to see. Yeah, there's tracks from earlier as well, because last week I didn't do a feedback stream, so we're backed up a little bit longer than usual. But we're going to start here with Pat Person, and then just scroll down through all of the tracks. Hope you guys are all doing well. Barono is here in the chat. HDJ808, how are you doing? Welcome, welcome. It is still connecting for me, I think, because the analytics aren't showing yet. So let's hope that in a little bit everybody is here and that we can get started. How are you all doing? Infr, welcome. How are you doing? We're 5 by 5 here. I have no idea what that means, but I'm assuming that it's a good thing. I am seemingly dropping connection a little bit. Let's hope it's not too bad here. I'm just going to wait a second before we actually get into the feedback to see if the connection is stable. It does sometimes give me an orange like box, you know what I mean, in the OBS. I can show this here even though it gives us the inception. Yeah, you can see we're sometimes dropping down here. Of course, I don't want to do this and then have the stream not be high quality. So that's old radio talk for everything coming through clean and clear. Yeah, I am doubting that a little bit now that I get these warnings over here. Gonna be uploading a tune and then dipping. The stream will be available on my channel as always, so that you can just watch it back if you need to. Dashboard, I guess. No, your stream is actually fine. Okay. Are you guys sure? Because I'm dropping frames. It says I'm dropping 50% of my frames. Which is not good. Now the stream dropped for 8 to 10 seconds. What if I quickly restart my router and then come back? I don't know if you guys heard that, so I'll type it in chat. Okay. Let's hope it goes better now. Goes better. But hopefully we can get started soon. As you do have quite a lot of tracks now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tracks already. Let me know if you guys can hear me in the chat. Maybe I need to restore the chat, actually, because I don't see you guys writing yet. I should be able to see it here. Yeah, I need to reset up the chat for a second. Pop out chat. You're back, we hear you. Perfect, perfect. Thank you guys. Let's get started. We'll jump in with, where is it? Bad Person over here, their anthem. Still needs a couple of verses in the middle, but it's very close now. Changes start from 150 on. This is the track that we've been hearing a a few times on the stream already. I really like the track. There was another freeze. Oh. I'll try to keep my eye on it while it's going. And he restarted his router mess, so that was according to plan. Okay. Maybe he was a little bit behind on it. Yeah, but we should be back now. We should be all good and all set up. I'll keep my eye obviously on the connection where the chat is as well, and just check every once in a while if I see if it's stable or not. But we should hopefully be good. Anyway, I'm going to start with their anthem, and this is a track, as I said, that we've heard before, but there's changes obviously in it, so we'll just listen to it again. Let me know everything is also good audio-wise and that kind of stuff. Very flat already, so I'm worried that somewhere in the signal chain I have it set too loud. Track up until this point feels very, very noisy. I think with the aliasing it's going a little bit too far. Is nice and strong now, I like that. Although I do feel like the bass should probably sidechain a bit more to the kick. That slaps through the track a bit more.
Hey, did you hear the school dances? Do you did? Cool. I was wondering, one, if you'd wanted to go. Two, in your plans you swore to have more friends with. No? Oh, I understand. Yeah, I get it. Pull yourself together like a lifeline. Pull yourself together, it's the right time. Pull yourself together, cause the time ain't getting better. There's a sweat is sweating better. Get your act together, keep your head high. Get your act together, cause you know why. Get your act together, cause the bitches she can say is I don't wanna be there. Well, do you wanna...
Overall balance of the track, I feel like it's a little bit on the bright side.
Yeah.
I talked about like the specific aliasing before and some of the stuff that you were doing with the sound design and the noise and stuff. But here you can hear it sometimes feels like a big wall of noise in here. Drums feel a little bit quiet in comparison to the rest of the track. Personally, what I would also do is at this point when you have the like switch down and back up, have that vocal pad that is sitting in the whole part of the track removed, so that it becomes a unique section. Even here, I would probably not have the vocal melody throughout this whole thing, because now it feels a little bit too muddy. there's two melodies like playing through each other, and it's a little bit hard to follow the vocal over here. And then here you can reintroduce it once it becomes a little bit more spacious in the mix. The song was a trip. I listened to it a couple of days ago. This is a really cool song, a really cool idea. All of the, I guess, experimental stuff that this person is doing. I don't know if they're in chat here or not. I think they have the same Discord name as their YouTube name, from what I remember. I don't think I remember this part, like it getting really slow here, but I like it. Nice musical build-up in this segment, I like it.
Everybody, welcome to the beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Ooh, yeah, yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Ooh, yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Ooh, yeah, yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Oh, yeah.
I don't think I like that the vocals are sidechained to the kick. I like that the rest is sidechained to the kick, and also balance-wise I feel like the vocal is sitting now behind the chord, whereas I personally believe that the chord should be the backing for the vocal to sit on top of. This beginning of the end vocal is sitting in there better than the humming part of the vocal that we just heard.
Beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, you'll sit by my side. Beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, a plea for us never to part. Beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. I think we do one more, right? One more. Beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Beginning of the end, beginning of the end.
The vocal there was really cool, I like it. Overall, really great track, just needs a little bit of work on the mix, and there's a few areas in the beginning mainly where I say like you're just trying to do a little bit too much. Overall, a consideration to make is the stereo fields. You often go out of phase here, as you can see right now as an example. That makes it so that this track isn't really mono compatible. That being said, this doesn't sound like the kind of track that needs to be. Like, I don't think that this will be played in a club system or something like that. Maybe if you want to press this to vinyl, that will be an issue, right? Because some vinyl is pressed mono. I know that there's a way that you can press stereo information in vinyl by having two read and write heads at a 90-degree angle, both at a 45-degree angle of the actual disc that you printed in. So maybe if that is a consideration that you want to make, depending on how you want to release this, the mixing decisions differ, right? Like if you say, I'm purely going to release this digitally for people that are going to be listening to this on either headphones or stereo speakers predominantly, or they'll probably, listen to it in that way, or I don't know, something like that. It's a little bit easier to justify using more of the stereo field, even using technically too much of the stereo field, because it's never going to sum to mono. That being said, if you do want it to be mono compatible, then you would generally want to stay above this halfway point over here minimum, and the closer you are, obviously the better. Of course, if you're completely mono, then it's fully mono compatible, but anything in this first half area over here should be okay for mono compatibility. Very creative. It needs some editing and cleaning up, but I really dig it. Yes, exactly. There is some cleaning up to do, but overall the musical idea is really great. I really like this track that you've going here, all of the experimental stuff that you're doing. Anyway, I'm quickly going to check if there aren't any Patrons in the queue. For those that don't know, if you follow me on Patreon and support me there, you get priority in feedback stream. But seeing as there aren't any Patrons, we're going to move forward to synthetics over here with A sharp minor 140 BPM. So I guess no title yet, but at least there's the track. You couldn't cut it as is, but I'm sure a cut engineer could make it work. Yeah, of course. You would need to prepare a song for vinyl anyway, even with the amount of bass that you put in there, because there's like an EQ curve that gets used after the vinyl is read to restore how it's written on there with less bass and more high end, so that it's easier to write on it, I guess. But then you would, of course, need to find somebody that would be able to do that for you. Kick and bass just kind of starts a little bit out of nowhere. Would have loved a little bit more of a build up into it. Nice clean kick and bass, I like it. Although the bass line could be a little bit louder, like 2 dB. Top drums feel very, very dark to me. Also strange that they're immediately cut out again here. Just looking at the structure on SoundCloud that I have, the little preview here, and just the feeling of the track, it feels like structure-wise you're trying to write a very progressive track, whereas all of the sound design and just the qualities of the sounds in the track and everything like that suggests to me that this is a little bit more of a full-on track. So it feels like there's a little bit of a mismatch between the structure and the like sound design and the overall tone of the track that you're going for. In that regard, I would probably reduce the size of the breaks, especially because you have 2 breaks in here. Like, it's perfectly fine to have, if you are going for a sound like this, to have your intro 32 bars and then you go into kick and bass and you just stay there for maybe 5 sections of 16 bars, and then you have 16 bars of a break where you have a little bit of a build up, go into this drop over here, and then that drop immediately transitions into the rolling kick and bass again, and that continues towards the outro of the track. That way it feels a little bit more in line with, I guess, the sound design that you're going for, at least in the drop part of this track, from what it feels like to me. Mocha, how are you doing? Marcel Klein, how are you doing? Protocell, how are you doing? I didn't say hi to anybody, or at least very few people. Synthetics is also here in the chat, nice to see. Kev Human, welcome. Astrosonic Music, welcome. I hope you could find all of the information regarding the feedback. It felt like the ARP could continue playing here. Very shallow filter for your transitions there. It feels like you're using maybe like a 6 dB per octave filter or 12. I personally always go for 24 dB per octave filter because it does actually cut out the lower frequencies that way in a nicer way. A little bit of an empty part here, but I guess this is the outro. The bassline could use a little bit of stereo width. The plugin that I like to use for that is, of course, M Stereo Spread. I always recommend this. Anytime I hear a bassline that is purely mono, I recommend people using this plugin and just tweaking the bands and the focus and then setting this frequency. You set this frequency first, and then with the bands and the focus, you're able to change the tonality of the bassline. Overall though, really nice track, I really like it. I see something in chat, it's because he uses Ableton, but I don't see the question. I like to be here because all the tracks, even the new ones, to producing music are always high standards. That's really lovely to say, thank you. You're responding to something that I said. Aha. Well, when it comes to what I say, currently we're still on the lowest or the highest possible latency because of all of the connection issues that we saw at the beginning of the stream. That's another way that I'm trying to kind of work around the issue, because it's much worse when I go super low latency, right? Then it just absolutely cannot keep up. So when you guys say something to me, I don't necessarily remember the thing that I was saying a minute ago when I actually said it, because there's like, I guess, 30 seconds delay between, maybe not 30 seconds, maybe like 20 seconds delay between when I say it here in my room and when it gets to show on the live stream, and then you guys have to hear it, you have to start typing and everything, and then you have to send the message. So it takes maybe 40-50 seconds before I get your response again, and then I forgot kind of what I was talking about before. Did you see the Pioneer DJ/record box scandal? I have not, no. I try to stay away from as much drama as possible. No, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not a DJ, right? I'm just starting out DJing, so I'm not really in the DJing community. As like, I don't really care about like DJ news and stuff like that. I of course follow a lot of the news in production world, because that's my job. But outside of the production world, the DJing world, it's still a little bit separate. So maybe that is a story that I'll look into later. But for now, it is not something that I have heard anything about. So if you want my opinion, I cannot give you anything. Thanks, Projector, for all the feedback. You're the best. Thank you all for liking the track. Yes, Projector, it's a 60 dB per octave filter. I'll try to up it a bit. Yeah, it felt a little bit like the filter wasn't... how should I... Like you weren't entirely sure if you wanted to have a filter transition there. So it was like, I'm going to do a little bit of a filter, but I'm not going to make it too obvious. And what I would personally say is go with like 24 dB per octave so that it just nicely opens up, and then you have the space to put in a build up to rise the energy and to really take away the bass stuff so that it really transitions. You know what I mean? Older Pioneer controllers now need a subscription to run Rekordbox 7, even if the controller unlocked previous versions. You use Traktor anyhow, I think. Yes, I use Traktor. So I don't know anything about Rekordbox. My particular console that I have now isn't compatible with any of the versions of Rekordbox that are officially out there. I would need to get myself an unofficial version of Rekordbox, and that's not something that I'm really interested in doing. Like, I would need to download like a very old version somewhere and try to get it on maybe like a shady website or something like that. And as you can imagine, that is not something that I'm particularly keen on. So for now, I'm just working with Rekordbox. Of course, at some point I would like to get, I'm currently working with Traktor. Of course, at some point I would like to get like a more industry standard setup, and then be able to, you know, prepare the set in a normal way and just pull up to a club and plug in a USB and then start playing or something like that. But for now, since I'm still doing it in my bedroom and that's the only place that I'm doing it, it should be all fine. How much do DJing changes your perception about music production? There's always a myth that producers that also DJ have better understanding about the approaches, but I hope that it's not true because I do not get along with crowds. Oh, when it comes to like DJing, it does change your perception of how music is supposed to be written, but specifically how it works in terms of like transitions and stuff like that. But personally, I've had, I guess, 11.5 years of experience writing music before I got really into, or properly into DJing. Like, I've DJed a couple times before in front of my friends and something like that. But never something like, okay, I need to actually, you know, deliver a good quality mix or something like that. So now that I do a monthly mix, which I have to prepare another one soon, it becomes, you become much more aware of the things that matter in terms of structure when it comes to transitioning from one to the other, and how much energy you can have, and where certain transitions can happen. And I guess subconsciously you can start to write your music a little bit more to accommodate for that. I haven't personally noticed it for myself, but that is also because I spend a lot of time analyzing structures from producers that do actually DJ in order to write my music in the same way, or at least to use the same rules to make sure that my music would be able to fit into a live set with their music. So in that way, I think if you're not as experienced as I am, DJing definitely would help making you a better producer. Next up, we have Orin over here with Virtual Riot. Now, this is also a track that I believe he already sent once before. Maybe. Either way, we're just going to play it and see where it goes. I do see... Wait. I do see that there's 2 more messages here. So, just to make sure that I'm not skipping over any patrons, which I'm not, I'll just quickly scroll down. But seeing as that is not the case, let's have a listen to Virtual Riot by Orin. Just immediately into it. I like it. Vocal feels a little bit on the mono side, could be a bit more stereo, to separate it a bit more from the gratiness of the kick drum and whatnot. Nice clean kick and bass. I like it. I feel like the rumble of this kick drum is a little bit too loud in comparison to the transient. Like, I feel like it could knock a little bit harder, you know, it could punch you a little bit more in the face when the transient actually hits. This is some very low stuff there. I don't know if you want that in your track, actually. There's like some almost DC stuff happening here. A little bit harsh there. I know this is meant to be like a very harsh genre in terms of its sound design, but that part was harsh in the terms of the mixing sense. Here again, the lowest part you would probably need to filter that out in a way. I like the little panning detail sound that is happening here. Like every bar it switches from the left to the right and it just goes stock on the offbeat. A little bit of an unexpected drop. I'm not sure I like that. Just out of nowhere. I do really like this kick drum though. Yeah, this is a banger. Yeah, Orin is kind of known for producing really strong, really good music. He told me in private that he's been producing for 20 years, and you can definitely hear that. Very clear on the mixes. I don't have to say a lot of different things about like, oh, there's too many elements here, or this is completely out of balance. Here the feedback tends to focus more around detail stuff. Cool stuff. I like it. Sounds really cool. Let me see what people have been saying in the chat. 8 layers of kick. Nice. Always appreciate your feedback. You're welcome. Gabber Gandalf. Reminds me of the TikToks where you see somebody dressed up in a Gandalf outfit at like either a mosh pit or at raves or something like that. I think I've seen one where he has like the flow balls, you know what I mean? The 2 light up balls that are connected with like a string that you like move around like that and then they kind of follow. I saw at Burning Mountain, I saw Bliss actually play with those. In between the segments where he played with his guitar on stage, he would put off his guitar and he would take some of the balls from people that were already like playing on the stage and he would play with them as well. Looked very cool. Anyway, next up we have Infr with The Art of War. This is also a track that we've listened to before, as he says over here. But this is a finalized version, so let's have a listen. I'm going through these maybe a little bit quick, but we're getting a lot of them, so I have to.
We cannot allow our sons and daughters.
Did you see the Mud Wizard taking the cops that one time? Yes, yes, I did see that video.
Banksters' war.
Some German
For oil, for heroin.
environmental protest where the police got stuck in the mud and there was a guy dressed up like a wizard just dancing around them and pushing them over.
Sun Tzu, the great strategist for war, so that all confrontations are won.
Vocals could sit a little bit above the track a little bit more. Like duck the rest away from it a little bit. Maybe even in the high frequencies make a little bit more space for the vocals.
But we must prepare by becoming self-sufficient.
Especially because you have these really dark,
Which has not been done before.
like it's not a natural vocal, right? So it needs a little bit more space for the listener to actually understand what they're saying. Nice clean kick and bass. I like it, although I do think the kick could be a little bit lower in its frequency. Can we pinpoint the frequency? So this is now 49. It doesn't feel like the kick goes down very far. Whenever I'm writing an A sharp or G sharp, I tend to tune my kick drums lower still. So I tend to tune my kick drum between 45 and 40 hertz, like the tail part of it, the final part of it. Claps, or the clap feels very loud, the main clap here. I don't know if this graph that you see over here is the spectroscope spazzing out a little bit or if that's actually because of the clap. It does feel like anytime the clap hits, it becomes very stereo. So maybe that is something to look into. I feel like this graph is a little bit...
What if I told you?
Yeah, I can make it a little bit lower. Now it's easier to see. I feel like there's some sudden high end coming. I don't know if I like that idea of the... It's either hats or something else like that. Like coming in over time. Especially because it sounds like it's just happening on the offbeat. A little bit loud on the noise there. I guess the main two things that I would say about this track, the main two problems with the track is that A, it feels like it's all a little bit muddy and a little bit too wet on the reverb maybe. That could be one issue. And the two issues that I'm talking about may exaggerate each other a little bit. Because the second issue is that it feels a little bit too squashed together, the whole track. Maybe you're going a little bit too hard on the limiting compression. Yeah, some of these effects and stuff like that, they feel really loud. And in this case it can happen because it's on its own. And there's nothing that, if it were to go into a limiter with another sound, that other sound could push it down and squash it down like that. And in this case, even here in the fills, you can see that it's like it continues to be the same width of the waveform. So I feel like maybe you're pushing it a little bit too hard into the master and stuff is getting a little bit too squashed. Nice little plucky sound over here, I like this, with all of the glitzy details that you have going on here. I went ham on the limiting, it's minus 5.8 LUFS integrated, minus 2.9 LUFS loopy. Or temporary, yeah, sorry, temporary. I was just testing boundaries. Yeah, you have definitely pushed it over the boundary. Because what happens when you do this kind of strong limiting is not so much that the limiter itself cannot handle it. Like, it's not constantly limiter distorting here, right? So it can technically be like very clean limiting the way that you get this loudness. It's just that your front to back depth of the mix get completely squashed together. Because volume is front to back depth of the mix. If something is very loud, it's very in your face. If something is very quiet, it's very far away from you. And so if you squash everything together and all the time you push it very close together, you're basically kind of taking that whole balance that you have and you're pushing it all in the same small spot, and therefore you're just minimizing the differences between everything basically. know it's a bit beyond limits of good taste. I always like to do one render at the edge of breakup before I back off to its final state. Okay, that's a bit of a strange approach. I've personally never really done that, like purposely pushing my mix too hard. I always try to be very conscious of not pushing it too hard to keep the original balance of the mix in place as much as possible while obtaining competitive loudness levels, to say it in that way. I don't do clip to 0 or anything like that. I use it once after I clean the phase rotation and DC offset. Yeah, you don't have to clip to 0 either way. Psytrance is not meant to play at loudness levels of -6 or -3 LUFS like some other genres are. Like it's loud, right? Psytrance is loud at maybe like it plays at maybe like -8, -7-ish. Roughly that area is what I personally aim for. You don't have to go as in your face loud as possible, especially because it's sometimes nice to have a little bit of dynamics between the kick and the bass, and that is where a lot of the loudness, like if you squeeze it too hard, you're going to completely lose those dynamics. So just for simply that reason, if you want to maintain some of those dynamics, you cannot push it, or you cannot get something like -6 or -5 or whatever it is out of that, and in this case it's too much. Either way, I don't really like the musical idea. It sounds really nice. As I said, there's two major things. One was the loudness thing, and the other one, it felt in some spots like it was a little bit muddy and a little bit too reverberated. One of the reason why those two issues are like very intertwined is because of your kick and bass. I guess I can draw this to properly explain what is going on here. Hello. There we are. Your kick and bass is like 3 little steps, right? So imagine that this is the beat over here. You had your kick kind of doing this thing over here. And then you had your bass note over here, kind of going like that. And over here, kind of going like that. This is of course not to scale, but you can see it like the half of the beat would be here. Actually right on the transient, of course. But it's like a staccato bass, which is a taste that you can have. So this is not wrong per se. But what this means is, say that you're going to push this in a limiter. There's going to be reverb that is, say that there's a synth playing here, like a little plug thingy. There's going to be reverb that is fading out from this part over here. In this case, this reverb is sitting on top of the kick, so it gets squashed into the limiter. So the original kind of dynamics of the reverb get maintained, because the limiter is going to shave some stuff over here, and it's going to say like, oh, I'm always activating, so I'm always going to push the reverb down together with the kick, once it's limiting the master. But of course, over here, there is no kick. So when the reverb is still fading out over here, suddenly it has a lot of space. And the limiter is still saying like, I'm doing a lot of gain, I'm doing a lot of boosting into the limiter. And now that I have the space, that means that I can actually boost this reverb up a lot louder before I actually start to lose volume. You know, so you get this kind of pumping effect where suddenly over here in the staccato parts, in this part, and this part over here, all of those reverbs that you have on there and all of the delays and all of the other like small detailed tails of the sound suddenly get pushed into a limiter and suddenly becomes really noticeable and really loud. So that is something that you should probably look out for. And I think both of these effects are, as I said, they're intertwined. That there is, yes, a little bit too much muddiness, but the muddiness gets exaggerated by the extremely heavy limiting that you do. And the extremely heavy limiting that you do is a little bit more of a problem because of the muddiness that you have in the track. Like, technically there's nothing wrong with the volume levels that you have set up, but there's specific ways that you tend to produce for that, both in terms of arranging and that kind of thing, but also in the way that you mix, in that you take that into account when applying stuff like reverbs and delays and all of that kind of stuff. Next up, we have 2 tracks from Dark Eden. They have written a bit of a story. They even sent a picture of the project. You don't have to do this, by the way. I just look at the tracks and I just click the track and press play. Generally speaking, I don't want to sit here and read stories. I just kind of want to go through it. But this is Glitch and Roll. This is the first track that they sent, and I believe this is a collaboration that he said somewhere over here. Yeah, so this is Glitch and Roll, although it's not too glitchy. We'll be the judge of that. Let's have a listen. Are you playing both? Yes, yes I am. Name is Private Eden. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, I can see that in the SoundCloud thing. Yeah. Well, Dark Eden is only my video game, and as for music, it's private. Sorry. I didn't see that. Nice call and answer here. I like the kick and bass. I don't like how many things are already happening in here. Like I feel like this air should be a little bit lower in energy level going into it. Kick and bass is nicely cleaned. I like to see wavetable basses. I do think you can get away with your kick being longer, because the bass note is so quiet here. So I don't really get why the kick is cut off like this. I feel like the shape should kind of continue maybe down like this. Maybe if you want just a little bit quicker like this, but cutting it off so quickly, maybe not the best idea. Because you're losing a little bit of the power of the sub this way, because obviously it doesn't really have time to oscillate the sub that much. You don't really get that deep feeling from the kick if you're missing that second part of the kick's body, because you just don't have enough time to get to the lower frequencies and then oscillate enough to actually get that low frequency across. A little bit of a loud synth there. Overall, it could be a bit nicer to get a little bit more air out of the cymbals and stuff like that. Cymbals feel very, very dull here. Bit of a strange transition in here. I would like to see maybe some preparation for that, for the listener. Usually you tend to have like your kick and bass transition, right? Your filter transition, your high pass, in order to go into a break like that. Just so that it's clear to the listener, like, hey, something is about to happen. Also, every once in a while, after 16 bars, a fill would be nice, so that the listener can reset if they're ever lost in the groove of the track. Like we have over here. I felt like it was maybe a little bit too long without a fill like that. Maybe this was like 24 bars, maybe? Or maybe I just miscounted here. I like that new like squelching sequence that is coming in here. How it combines with the gated vocal path. I do think that at this point, both this sweep as well as the vowel synth, that wow wow synth, has run its course way too long. I wouldn't put it in this drop here. I would, whenever you had that break, everything after, I would probably remove that synth. Because it's such a standout synth, and using it over and over and over and over again like this, at some point it's just becoming a little bit boring. Like, we've heard this exact same sweep like 5-6 times, maybe even more. $32 bars, yeah. That feels like it's a little bit too much. It doesn't have to be like a bar fill, it can be half a bar fill or maybe even like a kick fill if you want to keep the bass in there. But one of the things that I've learned going to Burning Mountain again and really listening to the music while you're dancing to it is that the fills are almost as important for the flow of the track as everything that is happening in those 15 bars before them. Which is very interesting, because in the fill, that is the moment where, you know, you realize, oh hey, here we're going to something new, and then you kind of almost instinctively jump into the segment where the next kick is going to play, and you continue dancing. So what I would probably do is, up until this section, between that part where I said, between that first break that you had, like that 8-bar break, or whatever that was, and this section, now that the vowel kind of has its own call and answer response, I would remove all of the synths with that vowel in there, so that when it comes back, it's actually like impactful. It's hey, there's that synth again that we heard such a long while ago. Instead of it being, hey, here's that synth again that we've been listening to for basically the whole track at this point. Here again, going into the outro, there's not really that much of a transition. Overall though, I do have to say, very, very cool track. There's some really cool sound design in there. It is definitely glitchy. It is definitely rolling as well, as the title suggests. So Glitch and Roll is definitely a good title for it. It just needs a little bit of extra work in making it a little bit less boring by... I guess this is a good example of how I personally would not arrange stuff, in the sense that you have like a one shot over here and a one shot over here, and these just repeat throughout the whole track. I would personally refrain from doing that. I would personally, when I'm writing stuff, do I have a screenshot of a project, or would I need to open up an actual project? I would need to open up an actual project, so yeah, I'm not going to open up a project, but the way that I like to write, when it comes to my sequences is say that we create a MIDI track for structure. We'll have 15 bars of kick and bass, and then our 16 bars is going to be a fill here. And let's say that we have 4 segments. What I'll probably do is I'll start with just one shots over here. So this would be, say that there's like a one shot over here, and then there's a one shot over here, here, and here. And this kind of transitions into the next segment over here. So maybe over here I'm going to have a first sequence, and then I'll move to a completely new sound. Not a different melody for the same sound, but a completely new sound, a completely new idea over here. And then I would move to a completely new idea over here. And then I would move to a completely new idea over here. And this new idea, it doesn't have to be like one sequence, right? It can be made up of multiple sequences. There are ways in which you can include some of the elements that you use in one segment into another segment. But generally speaking, especially for your main attention drawing elements, your main attention drawing sound design, I would stick to 16 bars for all of the elements, so that it always changes. It's always interesting. Anytime that there's a fill happening, you hear the fill. The fill is the transition into the new element. And then from here, it's not like, yeah, we start dancing again. And, oh no, wait, this is the same element. What is going on? It is, oh, we start dancing again. Hey, there's a cool new sound here. That one shot is a pad. Oh. Yeah, but still, the thing stands in that. I guess what I meant with the one shot was that sweep up kind of thing. I don't know if that is what you mean, but that is one of the elements where I at some point just noticed like, hey, this is repeating so many times now. It feels at some point like it just actively becomes boring. You know, you start to say, hey, there's that sound again. Oh, there's this sound blocking the things that I actually want to listen to. Because it's covering up some of the other sounds. I guess is a way to say it. Matthias Panzer, I don't know if this is like a YouTube error, but for me, some of your messages are appearing 4 or 5 times. That is probably not, either that's like a YouTube issue or something like that, or you're spamming messages, in which case can I please ask you to stop. Thanks. Anyway, next up we'll have a listen to another track here, Nuclear Subs versus Dolphins versus the Dolphins version 4, first master. I can play that here. This does feel quite a bit louder, yeah. Kick and bass needs some cleaning. As you can see, we're bleeding into the kick transient over here. We're bleeding into the transient of the bass line. Also, the bass line doesn't really close. It stays open. Normally you have like a click to the bass line. In this case, it's just like mid-range. I don't know if I really like this texture-wise. I think it would be nicer if it has a bit more of a click and it closes a bit more into the mid-range. The other thing is that the bass line is a little bit louder than the kick, and you want it to be the other way around, because the kick is the most important part of the track. Here when the open half comes in, that is something that I would probably do right after a fill, as opposed to just in the middle somewhere, like you have it now. felt like it came a little bit out of nowhere. And that is also why I recommend doing 16 bars as opposed to 32 bars like you said. Because otherwise you don't have enough segments to actually make the changes that you want to make. I believe this is supposed to be a closed hat, but this seems like a very, very short closed hat. This is almost like a click, like an impulse, as opposed to an actual hat. I think I can hear like a very short, flippy, clicky sound in here, and I don't think I like it, the way that it's playing now. Why the Dolphins won the war. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. The clicking is like the sonar, I guess. I would personally change it. Like it sounds off to me. This is of course way too loud here. Also this high frequency stuff over here. High frequencies, especially with long sustained risers, downlifters, that kind of stuff, you have to be careful with it. That it's not too loud and it doesn't actually become harsh for the listener. In this case here you have a lot of stuff happening between like 1000 Hz and maybe 4000 Hz, which is where ears are most sensitive. So this would probably be a place that I would put in a Reese bass, just so that I'm not this harsh. Because right now you're only really in the harsh frequencies, right? Or at least a lot in the harsh frequencies over here. Or this little spot here. So this, at a sound system, people would run away from the dance floor because at some point your ears would just start to hurt. Here with the riser, the riser isn't necessarily rising into the kick drum, so it feels like it kind of continues to go, and therefore it is a little bit unclear where it's actually rising up to and where the point is where, you know, you need to get the push, you need to start dancing again. Part of that is the risers, in my opinion, just too loud, and the other part is either it has some reverb or it's misplaced a little bit. It felt like it was a little bit longer than for the first kick. It should probably just either cut off before the first kick or right at that first kick. I'll EQ this part. I don't think an EQ would do the trick. As I said, personally I would add a Reese bass to it so that you have something to counter against that mid-range stuff. I would also take all of that mid-range and high frequency stuff and lower it in volume so that it's more in the background. overall this whole track may be a little bit like the spectrum normally tapers off a little bit more. I do like that you can see the hat in the spectrum. That is something that I almost always advocate for, because that is kind of normal for sidevents to have that. It is maybe a little bit much here, so you could take the hat and turn it down 1 dB, maybe 1.5 dB, something like that. But overall it feels like the frequency spectrum should taper off maybe a little bit more as you go higher and higher. Like make it so that you're, instead of here, maybe like 3 dB lower, right? Or so this is 143, maybe 6 dB lower, so that this peak or the peaks that happen over here, that they happen here-ish, say. And that starting from here, it just tapers off a little bit more. Again, outro wise, there isn't much here. Somebody asked before, what is the things that you take into account when you start DJing in terms of music production? Like, how does music production change once you know about DJing? One of the things that you know is that you need like a proper outro so that you can mix into other tracks. Right now, it's just like full power the track. So if I add another track on top of that, there isn't really any space to mix in anything extra. Like, I cannot already start letting you hear some of the synths of the other track and that kind of stuff, because the track doesn't allow for that. There's no place in the track where you can transition into something new. You know what I mean? And that is also why in the other track I said in the intro, like the first drop, there was a little bit too much going on. There is a reason why in the first drop of, or in the first segment of each drop, you often hear just the one shots, like I described before in here. And that is just so that you have space so that you can put two tracks on top of each other here. Right? You need to, if you want your music to be played in a live set, you need to take into account how it's going to function in the context of a mix. Like, two tracks need to be played on top of each other. So there's one track that has to take up half of the space and your track has to take up half of the space. So you cannot fill the track as if you were in a part where you have the main element, where you have all of the hats and stuff like that. You slowly build it up, have some one-shots, have some little things in here, and then after 16 bars usually, you build up the track into the more higher energy, because then you have the full space. That is usually where your track plays on its own, so that is where you have the full space to go wild with whatever you want to do. When it comes to fills, I do small fills every 16 bar and bigger one every 32. Changes happen after the smaller fill don't need to be as intense, could be more percussion, etc. Personally, as I think that, like, I don't really think in major and minor fills like that. I think in just fills. And I do a fill every 16 bars, because that is the easiest, that is the most common approach. So that is going to combine the best with other people's music in terms of mixing it in. And of course I do agree with that is where the changes happen. As I said before, here stuff happens, and then here in the fill you actually transition into the new stuff that is happening over here. And you really notice that when you're dancing. Like, the moment where the kick and bass is not playing is the moment of that little bit of suspense, and then the kick and bass comes again, and then you go in and you start dancing again. So these moments, I would almost argue now that the fills of the track are more important than the part where the kick and bass is playing. In terms of the flow of the track, in terms of the way that the track progresses, the fill is more important than this part over here. And I have said before, and this is still true, I spend as much time on this part of my track as I do on the fill of my track. Like for any segment that I have in the track, I probably spend as much time on the part that is like the kick and bass and all of the synths and everything that plays on top of each other as I do with the fill over here. I kind of mean with the transition into the next segment. Because of course, part of the fill may be that you have kick and bass riser, or like the high pass filter rising over here, or maybe you have like a snare roll going into the fill, or a noise riser going into the fill. I would consider that part of working on the fill, kind of. Like that's not really working on the drop itself, but you write the main idea for the drop, and then you write in all of your synths, and you do everything that you need to do to get this part sitting right, and then it takes as much time to get this little segment over here, like as good as you want it to be, as it does writing the actual drop itself. Fills are criminally underrated. Exactly, yeah. They're much more important than people think. Do we have any patrons? No, not yet. I do have to count the tracks because we are getting to the point where I'm thinking of the first break. Of course, we'll play a few more tracks before my break, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tracks here. So that's enough for another hour or so. A little bit more, actually, of music. Either way, we're just going to continue moving on and hopefully we'll get through it all. And if I don't, of course, I always can close the queue. But for now, we're going to go to Zumi with the Enchanted Stream. I think you don't get a preview if you don't give it a cover art. That may be why this preview is like this, and that's why I cannot play it from here. I mean, that's not really a big issue. The only thing that happens then is that we don't have autoplay. A little bit white here. Could be a little bit more mono so that you're a bit more mono compatible here. I need to make dinner. That's unfortunate. Getting your fills to transport the energy in a correct manner is so much more work than you expect. Totally agree with you there. It is a lot of work, yeah. Very loud crash there. I'm not sure I like that.
I mean, if Pac-Man influenced our generation, we'd all be jumping around in dark rooms, shooting magic bullets and listening to repetitive electronic music.
Very bass-heavy kick and bass. I'm not sure I like that. Bassline is also too loud for the kick drum. And it's also not resampled, so that's probably something that you want to fix. I don't like the lack of, or the complete lack of transient. You have probably set your initial phase in a wrong way in that the click isn't actually there. Very dark, muffled track. There's nothing happening above 10k. It's like you have taken all of the sounds and you've hard filtered at like 13k, 12k. Why would you do that? Why would you cut it off here? You have all of this extra space available here. I know that SoundCloud compression takes that away, but that doesn't mean that you have to do that yourself before it. I don't think I'm a fan of the melody in here, like the little arp that you're doing, because it feels like everything else is very dark. And that one thing is like very happy, so it doesn't feel like it works theme-wise. The other thing, those two crashes were, felt like they were in random spots. They felt a little bit unnecessary. There wasn't really a transitioning happening there that needed those crashes. Like it would have been fine without those crashes. And thirdly, they were way too loud. Another thing, this pad is now way too loud, and before it was also way too stereo. I'm not really a fan of this low-passed feeling kick and bass here.
Death is in our air, in sea and earth. Just remember, we live and we die. We control nothing beyond that.
Is this a different bass line than we had before? Because now we have these cancelling things happening in here. Is there like a comb filter on this bass? Why does it look like that? Again, not really a fan of the chosen synth here. Like this is a hardstyle synth. Specifically like raw style, it feels like. So it doesn't really fit with what you would normally hear inside of Psytrance. Especially because you have a lot of non-melodic, like destroyed pads and stuff like, or morphing pads playing underneath it. So it doesn't really make sense for there to be like this happy melody on top of it. Theme-wise, that doesn't really fit together. Bit of a strange rhythm on the clap there. I think overall it is safe to say that this is autoplay, but it's also safe to say that you have been producing for not too long. You can still hear that you're still starting out and just trying to find which sounds work well on a track and how to actually place them in a track. I'll give you the feedback that I'll give any beginner producer. Spend half an hour a day listening to professionally or like reference material. I would say professional music, but maybe that is a bit of a strange way of saying it, because it's not like there's people that make money off of music. That automatically means that music is the best, right? But use reference material. Listen to reference material for half an hour before you start producing every day, and then give it a year, and you should be able to try to emulate at least that kind of music. At least if you put in a lot of time, depending on the amount of time that you obviously have to spend on production. That may differ, but to me, the best way to up your listening abilities for how music is supposed to sound versus how your own music is sounding is to listen to a lot of other people's music. Do you guys also feel like using fills are cheating? I'm not saying that they are, but I never feel comfortable releasing track unless I make most part of the fills or change them until unrecognizable. I don't know what you mean there. Fills are crucial to the progression of your track. So using them is not so much cheating, it's a must, I would say. Unless you mean like a fill sample in that way. And in that case, it's not any different from using any other sample. in that that's what they're there for. So using something for the specific function that they're there for is not cheating. No, I wouldn't consider that cheating. It's like using a kick sample for your kick in the track. Like, what else are you going to use it for? That's what it's meant for. People say, is using samples cheating? No, that's why they're there. So use them for... At the end of the day, you don't have to justify your use of samples or presets or whatever the cheating is in music production to anybody. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, does the audience get a good track that they can listen to, that they can enjoy? That is really important. The way how you get there, which production techniques you employ, where you take the sounds from, all of that doesn't matter. Right? Nobody is going to go to a Psytrance festival and like move on to the dance floor and say, hey, wait a second, I recognize that sound. That is a preset that I made and sell on my Gumroad pack. I'm going to stop dancing because I don't like that they're using presets. I did go to Burning Mountain and I heard one of my presets being played in one of the tracks. Like, I don't remember which track it is. I don't remember which artist it is. But I heard like, hey, that modulation, that is very, very familiar. I believe it was from volume 2 of my Psychedelic Essentials pack. And that doesn't make me stop dancing. Like, knowing that it's a preset, knowing that they didn't make the sound, it doesn't take away any enjoyment from the music. Because at the end of the day, you're there to enjoy the whole song, not just individual sounds, and it's the whole song that needs to flow well and that needs to make you move. And an individual preset, as long as it helps towards that goal, it should be in the track, right? Anyway, too much discussion, too much talking, not enough music listening. It has been 1.5 hours, so I'm going to take a quick break here. After that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tracks. Quite a lot, actually. But for now, I'll put on some music for you guys to listen to in the break while I'm quickly gone. There we are. I'll put on this track. I have played this track in a production stream recently, but I haven't played it for a long, long time in a feedback stream. So I'll play this one over here. Should be really cool to hear on preset at the festival. It is really cool, yes. I also heard what I thought was a track of one of my students, but then I sent it to him and he confirmed, like, they were remixing the same track, but it's not his remix of a track, it was another person's remix of a track. It did just sound like very much like his work. But of course, if you're there on a festival, it's not like you're immediately able to identify a track there. And it was a project that we had worked on maybe half a year ago or something like that. So I was like, hey, that's cool. That is his track. That would be really cool. And he had told me that he had sent his music to one of the DJs that would be performing there. And he had specifically asked me to look out for his music. So I was already in the mindset of, hey, I'm going to hear his track maybe. It would be really cool if I could send him a video of his track. And it would actually, make his day. But at the end of the day, it turned out, or he confirmed to me that it wasn't actually his track. Either way, I'm going to play this one over here. And then once we're back, we're continuing with the feedback with Thera Music and Zoran, Eternal Gate. And then everything else that is also submitted. What a timing for me to return from the break. Cosmic Currents, welcome to the stream. Greedo, welcome to the stream. I think that's everybody. Brooke, I'm sorry I didn't see you before, but welcome to the stream as well. I hope you're still watching. Anybody up for a collaboration? Let's work on something new. I did actually make something for collaborations. I made this thing over here, this channel, where you can post your tracks or something like that for people to collaborate with. This was in request to the video that I posted on collaborations, where I explicitly said, like, if there's interest in this kind of thing, I can just make a channel for it in my Discord. So now if you want to do a collaboration with somebody and somebody is up for it, you can just post your track or the project that you're already working on, or maybe if you have some ideas and you're not working on something already, you can just post something in here that gets people excited for it. What I would say is something like this, a message, as cool as it is that people are actually looking for collaborations in here, this doesn't excite anybody to work on the collaboration. Like, the best way is just to post a project that is already in like a little bit of a stage that gets people excited for it. But other things can be like, hey, I have this idea for a track and I haven't started producing it yet, but I would love to produce that with somebody else. Actually, you know, get people excited for the collaboration that you're working on. So for that, there is a channel available if you're interested in that. And then you should be able to post it in here. And yeah. Anyway, we're continuing with Therapy, Zoran, and Eternal Gate over here. I did just realize that I did not have these on here for the break, but that's okay. I hope you guys still enjoyed the music. For now though, let's have a listen to Therapi and Zoran Eternal Gate. Michelle, welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Nice tonality for the kick and bass. I would love to see it cleaned up though, re-sampled. Especially around here, I feel like the kick is maybe a little bit too long. Like it might bleed a bit into this part over here. And over here you can see there's not really a clear transient to these things. I do like that you're fading out over here, which is good because then your kick transient doesn't get bleed into. But you would want to do the same thing for your bass line as well, of course, by resampling. Goa trance. It does have more old school Goa trance vibes, this track here. I feel like some of the synths, especially when they're opening up fully, they become a little bit too loud. Like I heard it going into the last break, but there I was like, okay, this isn't really a problem yet because it just was like for a very short part. But this synth over here, it feels like it's just a little bit too loud. It's overpowering the kick and bass at this point, so that is a bit too much. Like the acid lead is better, I would say, in terms of its volume to the rest of the track. Riser has the same kind of problem in that it's a little bit too loud. And I think what is happening is that you're putting that riser in maybe last volume wise, and because some of the other elements are already overpowering the kick and bass, you feel like you have to put the riser in there as well so that it comes out clearly, and that is not really where risers are for. When it comes to risers and downlifters and that kind of stuff, you have to treat it as a backing element, right? Unless you have a downlifter like this where it's on its own and it's doing something special, it doesn't really make sense for the riser to actually take over the musical idea, because it's just guiding the musical idea up or down in terms of energy. Some fills in this track would be nice. When you're changing elements and stuff like that, having a half a bar or a bar where the kick and bass doesn't play usually makes the transition a lot easier, like we talked about before. What track are we on? This is Therapi and Zoran Eternal Gate. We have a lot more music in here. We still have like 10 tracks left to go. Here the track feels very overpowered by the synth. You can even almost see it in the spectrum, that the spectrum doesn't go down as quickly as you would want it to. There's a lot of stuff happening here in the harsher areas. This is Goa trance, question mark? Yes. I think this would be new Goa trance, like modern Goa, I guess is the way to describe it. Like it uses modern production techniques to get the same vibe as old school Goa. Like clearly the kick drum is fairly new sounding, right? In terms of the texture, in terms of the weight that it has in there. But the way that the sound design works and the way that the arrangement works and all of that stuff is more of an old school vibe, I would say. It's not your modern psytrance, it's not your old school Goa, it's like a combination of the two. Either way, I really like that track. It sounds really nice. Just a few details to work on. I'm maybe going through them a little bit faster than I would usually do. But I'm just going to move on to the next track, which is Bang by Ben Di Gerrig. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but if I'm not, I'm sorry. Either way, this is Bang. Fairly empty start here. The hat is somewhat panned to the right, which is an odd decision. I think you would also need to make sure that your kick drum doesn't get pushed up here. I think that is still what is happening. If I just look at what the transit is doing here and how the waveform kind of continues into that, I would assume that it's being pushed up here. So personally, I would just LFO here. I don't think you need to resample this because this bassline doesn't necessarily have any real transients to them. My favorite part of the week, projector mangling my name. I know that it's a thing that I often do, but that's just how it is. It's on you guys for having such weird names, okay? I like this vocal effect. Overall, mix-wise and arrangement-wise, it started off a little bit empty and I was like, this is sounding a little bit strange, but it's just like a very minimal feeling. And now that the track really has started to get going, you can hear that you're filling up the frequency spectrum nicely, you're filling up the arrangement nicely, so really well there, done there. A little bit of a pause here, or at least the way that it maybe lowers a little bit in volume before it goes into the kick drum would be nice though, so that you have some impact when the drop actually starts playing again. these sounds, that washing in sound and the little bleeps that you have repeating every 2 bars here, I feel like it's a little bit overused, and this is one of the spots where I would personally just turn it off, so that for a second you don't have this sound in there, always in the background. Ring modulation plus a bunch of other stuff. Very interesting. You can hear the ring modulation kind of. It's almost like a very fast stuttering effect. I think the snares are just too loud in general here, because you have the same problem again going into this kick over here, in that the waveform is already at full volume. So when the kick starts to play, normally what you would have is waveform is at this volume, and then the kick starts to play, and it just becomes a little bit bigger in just loudness, so that it's like impactful, right? And now it feels the snares are they're at the same peak level, but loudness wise they're even louder than the kick drum, because they are more in the area where loudness is weighed more, which is the mid-range over here, or over here on the spectrum, this area over here. Like the kick drum is mainly over here, right, with the bass. So what ends up happening from an arrangement point of view is that when we get into the drop, the track actually becomes quieter and therefore a little bit less exciting, as opposed to it needing to become more exciting, which is what at the end of the day we really want. We want people to say, oh hey, this is the exciting part, let's start dancing. I always wanted to know an ingredient list of VST used to make a song. I would need to think, like, maybe that is a good video idea. That being said, though, it doesn't really matter what plugins you use. It's how you use them that is actually important. So it would be interesting, but it wouldn't actually be that useful information, I would think. Thanks for the feedback. We'll look at the volumes around the snare roll. You're welcome. We'll move on here to Abzal with a SoundCloud link that doesn't show a preview. Sometimes that worries me, but in this case, it does seem to just be a working link. Like sometimes it worries me that when it doesn't show a thing like this, that it's a dead link, that it doesn't work and the person has long left the stream and they're expecting to have their music play on the stream when they watch it back, and then I cannot play it. But now it does just seem to work. This has already had one fire emoji, so let's see what this is all about. Eternal Desire by Abzal, and this is mastered. Yeah, but Omnisphere, yes, I do. Personally, I do use Omnisphere. Omnisphere is the best. Omnisphere is really good for getting more detailed, textured sounds than you get out of your usual synths, I would say.
Get it.
Nice build up here. I like it. Clean kick and bass. I like that as well. I like this sound design too, although it sounds like the delay tail just kind of continues going. Usually when I have sounds like that, I want the main sound to come through a little bit more, and what I usually do is I filter the highest frequencies and sometimes also the lowest frequencies of the delay tail, so that over time the feedback makes the delay tail kind of, if you look at it on the spectrum, it kind of cuts it out on the higher frequencies and lower frequencies in the spectrum, so that it's a little bit more clear that it's like actually fading out. Really love the interaction there with the synth and the kick and the way that it goes back in there. I like the reintroduction of that plug there for a second to change it up from the other one. Personal tip that I would always try to implement in my own kick and bass filters like this is I lower it by, say, 5 dB when it's not in the drop. So when it actually hits in the drop, it's louder, and therefore you get more power out of the parts where it's actually in the drop. Second thing, the bass line is fully mono. I talked about before how I like a little bit of stereo wave on there with stereo spread. Something that I've shown many times. I'm not going to go over the settings every time that it comes up, but that is something that I would personally probably do here in this case, especially on a progressive bass line like this. I see some new people in the chat. James Whitetaker, welcome. Novice, I think, is in the chat here as well, although they have a different name in the YouTube chat. I know them as Novice in the Discord chat, and I cannot pronounce the name that they have in here, but welcome to the stream. Barzhav,
Grateful for
welcome as well.
Life, or are you always wanting more?
You're doing well.
Trust me, I get it. I understand people that strive for more. I understand people that want something bigger and better. But at the same time, if you allow yourself to only think about what you don't have, to only be striving for something more, that obsession will begin to overtake you, it will begin to corrode you. But ultimately, it's a choice. Anytime, right now, in this moment, you can stop and think about what you have. You can put your attention on the things you're grateful for and watch what it does. Watch what it does in that instance, the way that it changes you, the way that it changes your chemistry, your feelings in a moment can shift from negative and dark to beautiful.
I guess arrangement-wise, what I would personally do is go back into a rolling bass line here. Since that's your first drop, I would also do it for the third drop, so that your second drop is like the special drop. And you can use your first and third drop to just mix them in a set that has rolling bass line. I love that you're spending a lot of time working on the details in the way that things layer up with each other. Like I talked about before with the kick drum and that synth there in the first drop. And also here we had an example of that. Yeah, you're now going into a rolling kick and bass. Personally, I would just do that for the whole third drop. That would, arrangement-wise, make more sense to me.
And trust me, I get it.
Very cool track. I really like that. Sounds very, very cool. We have one more track in here, so let me just quickly check. That is a Patreon, as some people may not know. Patrons get priority in feedback streams, so anytime that there's a red name over here, we do them first. That means that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more tracks. It's not going down the amount. I think... How long have I been live now? 2 hours. I think I have at least another hour of music here. So I guess for today I'm going to close the queue here. Because we have so much music to go for. You guys can of course still submit, but then it will be played in the next feedback stream on next Sunday, as opposed to this one. And for now we'll just finish off the tracks that we have left. I'll listen to all of these. Of course, starting with the Patreon track over here, which is IO with Ultra. I'm sharing one, wait please. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but I do have to think about how much time I have, because I have to edit today. I still haven't finished the videos that need to go up tonight. So I do have to go at some point. Meaning that I do have to close the queue at this point. Very, very loud intro here. I would argue way too loud. It's constantly hitting full scale, meaning that this feels like it's pushed really hard. Is it okay to send tracks through the week so I can send it a little early on stream? Yes, of course. You can just push it into the queue, and every week I go through the queue, but I don't really care when it's actually put into the queue. As I said, you can push the track, put the track in there right now, and I'll just listen to it at the start of next week's stream. There hasn't been a moment where this track hasn't hit full scale yet, so I'm really scared that the drop itself is going to be way too loud. If this is already the intro. Okay. Bit of a strange change to the tonality here. This means that the kick and bass and the drop is actually quieter than the intro, which is a very strange decision. Also musically, I think that this is like very dark, whereas the intro itself is very bright and uplifting. So it's a bit of a strange combination. Also, your kick and bass needs to be reset. Send any type of music, I think. Yes. If the track is not sidelined, it is fine to send. Yes. You can send whatever you want. Vocal is a little bit hard to hear. Meaning that this is probably not the right place to put the vocal in here with the amount of stuff that you already have going on here. I like this. That sounded very cool. I also like this segment. This segment is a little bit less busy, so I like that. I really like that part. That sounded really cool, the way that you transitioned into it. I was like, wait, what's happening here for a second? And then once you understand it, it sounded really cool. That's often the case. Once you understand the structure of an idea, the idea itself becomes a lot clearer to the listener. And that is why it's so important that, at least for the most part, you tend to stick to conventional structuring for your track. I agree with Guido. I also really like basically the entire track. As I said before, I didn't really agree with the intro being so uplifting in terms of musical idea. The big problem that I have is that this track is mastered way too loud. You could probably shave off, at least in here when it's in the break and in the intro, you can probably shave off 10 dB of the input gain that you're pushing it into the master limiter to, and it would be okay. Generally speaking, when it comes to these breaks, what you'll find in the waveform is that they're quieter than full scale, that you never really have a sample that hits full scale here. You can see it in this little segment of my track that is still visible here. Right? Here's the drop, you can see its volume, and over here you can see that basically everything is quieter than the kick and bass is here in the drop. Just if you look at a macro scale version of the track. If you really zoom into it, then there may be a few samples that are this loud, but not to the extent that you have in this track. A little bit extreme on the zappies here. I would personally probably put on a bandpass filter to modulate so that it's a little bit like less all over it, like the full frequency spectrum. Or I would make the notes shorter so that it's a little bit more staccato. Loves don't always say it all, it's a combination of loves and the balanced mix. Well, loves does take into account the balance of your mix, like the spectral balance of your mix. So that's not entirely true. The loves do take that into account. Like this area over here, for example, counts more towards a loves value than the bass. So for example, equal loudness sound at the bass level and this level over here are going to have different love values. Even if it's just like a sine wave playing here versus here at the same volume, like peak. here you have some vocals that I can understand and some that are really hard to understand. Overall, final conclusions of this track is twofold. One, the loudness is way too much. You're pushing this way too hard for the track. And two, I feel like sometimes the track is a little bit too busy, like you have a few too many things going on. One of the things that you have to take into account, which is really hard as a producer, is that the way that you experience a track is different from the way that the listener experiences it. Not just in what we normally say with that, in that you want to make sure that your listening environment is like very nice so that you can make sure that it translates well to different systems and whatnot. You know, all of the mixing aspects to it. But also the psychological idea of you are the person that has worked 20, 30, maybe like in my case, 40 to 50 hours on a track when it releases, and the listener hears it for the first time. So you know exactly where every element is going to be and what is exactly in the track. You know, okay, here there's going to be kick, bass, I'm going to have some hi-hats, there's that like cinematic drum loop, there's some synths in here, there's some effects in here, and then there's the vocals. But the listener doesn't hear that. They have to decode that in real time from the single audio signal that they get sent to their headphones or their speakers or that is playing on the festival system, right? So for you personally, you tolerate less space for certain elements than the listener does. Because you are so familiar with the project that it's much easier for you to decode that single audio signal that you're hearing into its individual components. Into the kick, bass, hi-hats that sit on top, the synth that sits in the middle, and the vocal that sits in there, and all of the effects that are playing around it, and that cinematical like drum loop there. In this case, for that last part of that drop, I would say personally that the how could you like explain that it's not a part where I would personally put vocals in, because you just don't have enough space to clearly understand them. Not a fan of the vocals here. Yeah, exactly. But for me, it's for like a very specific reason, in that it's not like the vocals are wrong. It's just that they don't have enough space for the listener to be able to understand what is being said by the vocals. Which at the end of the day, if you listen to a vocal, that is really the point of a vocal. It is to tell a story. And if the arrangement, it's not even a mixing thing, right? Like you can turn down certain elements to make more space for it, but only to a certain extent. Because at that point you're going to say like, hey, there's some cinematic drum loops in here that you have turned down so much that you can barely hear them. Or there's some synths in here that you've turned down so much that you can barely hear them. There's also an arrangement aspect to it in like just not putting too many sounds into one small space. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Yeah. Do I remember which track? Oh yeah, we finished off with this track over here, which is getting 3 fire emojis now. That's a very good rating. Anyway, we're moving on to TRZ with Psy Mai Tai, with some very cool artwork. I really like that. That looks really cool, really trippy. Let's have a listen here. Thanks for the feedback, you're welcome. Hope that it's helpful. This seems to be a little bit faster. Kick and bass sounds a little bit strange to me. It doesn't really have a strong click to the attack of the kick drum. Like, I'm not a fan of the click that you have now, the transient that you have now, like a sharp transient. And the same is true for the bassline. I feel like the bassline doesn't really have enough high frequency click to it, right? There's not enough stuff happening up here. Usually when it comes to my kick drums, I low pass them at 10k and my bassline at 8k, but I also make sure that there's a lot of stuff happening right here so that you get a nice strong transient that actually indicates where the groove kind of sits, because now it feels like it doesn't really have that. Please close the queue after Hub Hub, please. No. It's just for next week. We'll have to come back. I do have to just limit the time that I do feedback streams because I have other work to do. So I hope that you understand. It's not something that I have against you personally, but like I can only allocate so much time to the stream. Because I have other things that I need to do as well. I have to just make sure that you guys have videos for the next week. I know this week there were going to be a little bit more feedback because of course last week I took the time off to go to a festival. And that will probably happen again in August, maybe even for 2 weeks then, that I take some time off. But I do have to stay within a certain time frame, especially now that I also didn't have that time to work on videos. I need to catch up basically on the video part. I'm behind on the videos, so I cannot really do that. I like all of the sound design that you're using. I feel like it's a little bit boring, not because the sound design in and of itself is boring, but I feel like some of the synths have been playing for too long now. Especially that first synth that came in, I feel like it's still playing. So I would personally stop that and overtake it with the other sounds that you have played. It's not like you have too few sounds in this part of the track. Also, when you're doing fills, don't leave the kick playing. Actually, have a fill in there, have the listener reset for a second, like you're doing over here. This is much better. It's also the case, Basaf, that if I say, yeah, you can come through the queue, then the next person is going to submit and they are going to say, then if you let him through, you should also let me through and let me through, and that's just a chain reaction. That means that it will never end, right? Bit of a strange bass melody over here. And the other thing I will say is that the pad that is playing in here, I'm not sure I would personally have that. Because it feels like that pad has been playing ever since the very first kick and bass. Maybe even in part of the intro. So that is really boring now, and it doesn't really do anything for the energy level. What it tells you energy level wise is that everything is like really fast in terms of the sound design, in terms of the energy. Like it's pretty hype, right, with all of the quick sounds that you have. And then there's this really basically static sound under it, which doesn't really do a lot to change like texture. It's not like a morphing texture. It doesn't change all the time. It's just kind of there. So personally, I would just remove that pad from the drop. Like focus purely on the synths, give the synths a little bit extra volume so that they, because you free up some space doing that. So that would be my thing there. The last thing that I wanted to say that I didn't really have time for is that your hi-hats and stuff like that sounded really, really dull. As you can see, there's not really a lot happening in the high frequencies over here, and you can see the hi-hats are very low in volume. They also seem to fluctuate a bit more than just like traditional sidechaining. So either you're doing that deliberately, in that case I would say don't do that, or there's something that you would need to fix there. Maybe you need to compress it in a way or something like that. But overall they can also be just a lot louder. You want that little spike that I talked about before in the stream on top of your like frequency around 10k, so that head kind of pierces through a little bit more. Obviously, like the normal mixing advice is that your spectrum is going to look something like this, right? Where there's nothing really much happening in here, and then towards the low frequencies, you're going to see some stuff going up here, and then it tends to, for most music, just tailor off like this, right? It kind of tailors off maybe like this, and then a little bit faster at the really high frequencies. But for psytrance, what you'll see is that, okay, we have our bass part over here, that is really loud, and then it kind of goes like down like this. You'll see maybe a little bit of growth in here. You can see it maybe go down a little bit more in here, and then it goes up again a little bit like this. Of course, the way that I draw it out is not exact. Don't just try to copy the thing that I just drew out with your spectrum. But generally speaking, if you look at the mixing spectrum, what you'll see is instead of it going up and then just sloping down the higher you go in frequency, there's at least one bump over here for the hi-hats, and often for the synths a little bit of a bump at around maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000 to 2,000, this kind of area over here, and a little bit of a dip between say 700 and maybe 200 hertz, maybe 150 hertz. Like this area tends to be a little bit lower in volume. It depends again on the type of psytrance that you're making. If you're making more progressive psytrance, then this is a little bit less. You'll see this idea a little bit less. If you're making, I know for a fact that Des Glitch really does this in his tracks, where there's like a bigger dip in the frequency spectrum over here, which the idea behind that is that you're essentially pushing in more separation between the lowest few harmonics and therefore the sub bass, the like bass part of your track, and the rest of the track. So that is maybe something that you could look into, getting a little bit of a better overall spectrum for the track that you're trying to make here. I think that would also work for you if you're, especially the heads part, of course, but also maybe pushing this area that I talked about down a little bit more. Next up, though, we have Better Message, also known as Matos Z 28011. With another track, which is known as Community. Let me play that from here. Get myself some candy here. Really like ear candy that you have in this part of the intro here, and that made me think about actual candy, so I'll have some of that. Personally, I am not a fan of just kicks in the intro like this, but that's more of an aesthetic thing. It's not like technically wrong to do it like this. I'm just not a fan of it. Kick and bass is definitely going to need resampling. We can mainly see that in the bass over here, that the bass is being pushed down. I am assuming that roughly here is where the transient would be. Here and here. Just looking at the waveform. And that is being pushed down, so I think you need to resample the bass, but you are LFO tooling it out of the way of the kick drum to get a clean kick drum. It's like Dark Side, but fairly slow Dark Side, especially with all of the pads that are playing. Maybe something to consider is to, at least in this part here, when the energy goes a little bit higher, to just completely remove the pads, and in that earlier part to lower them in volume, because they feel like they're really taking over from time to time. Jersey here, thanks for the feedback, sir. You're welcome. Hope that it was helpful. Again, mix-wise, the hats could have a little bit more volume, could pierce a bit more, and over here you have some low end that is out of control. Overall, it feels like mainly the synths and the mid-range stuff over here is too loud. I wouldn't fix that with like a mastering EQ. I would just try all of the mid-range stuff, put that in a group and turn that group down by maybe 3 dB. As I said before, the pads, at this point really the pads not only feel too loud, feel too overtaking, but they also feel boring, so they should have probably been removed a while ago, and then now that you're going into the breakdown you can reintroduce them, and then you also have the effect, like the added bonus of them being new then, and then they haven't been sitting throughout the whole track, so they're not as boring as they would be now. Because now we've been listening to them throughout basically the whole track, I feel. Loud sounds there and there. That tea that you're drinking, if it is tea, what type is that? This is my famous iced tea, just in a bottle like this. So it is technically tea, but I don't remember which one of the like 20 different teas I have at home I used to actually make this. But it is some kind of vanilla tea, I think. Overall, this track seems to, flow-wise, pretty much stay at the same level. There's not really a point where the track kind of becomes more intense or less intense, where it's like just the kick and bass for 8 or 16 bars before you have maybe like a short one shot, and then it slowly builds up into more sequences and stuff like that. So therefore the whole track feels a little bit flat in my opinion. I do really like all of the different sound design things that you're doing in this track though. There's a lot going on. You do have a sound that is a little bit too loud there. I really like the synergy that you have between kick and bass and the like little drum things that you were doing over there. That being said, the bass line could have a bit more of a pluck to it on the transient. It feels like the bass line doesn't really go above, I don't know, like 300, 400 hertz, maybe? Maybe a little bit higher. I can see like some small stuff happening up until 1K, but anything above that, there's not really much there. So a nice click to it would be nice in my opinion. This, for me, I see people chatting about when they would like to play this at the festival or something like that. This, for me, sounds like the kind of track that you would play on a sunrise set. Right? I feel like at 11 AM you want a little bit more of a calmer, calmer stuff. Maybe a little bit more of a uplifting stuff, because that is already when the sun is out and it's during the day and stuff, and people generally are like eating and whatnot. So personally, maybe that's also the festival that I tend to go to. Burning Mountain is at this point the only festival experience that I've had. I am going to WoW Festival pretty soon, which is a little bit more psychedelic and a little bit less prog stuff happening. So maybe there I change my mind a little bit on what I would like when during the day. It's kind of funny, now that I've gone to a few festivals, I feel like in the very beginning when I got into psytrance, I was just like, oh, you just listen to whatever music you like at whatever point. It doesn't really make sense to correlate a specific type of psytrance with a specific time of day. That felt a little bit strange to me. But the more that you go to like the festivals and stuff like that, the more that you understand that there is really a good reason for playing one type of psytrance at one point versus another point. It does really make sense that you're starting with some more progressive stuff, the little bit of slower stuff, and maybe during the day, and then transitioning towards the evening, you go maybe into my type of music, and then at night you go into the more nighttime full-on, you know what I mean? And then you go into the even deeper and the darker stuff. Maybe you throw in a little bit of high-tech, maybe you do a little bit of dark side, maybe a little bit of forest, that kind of stuff, and then you just kind of circle around like that. It does now in my head make sense to me that you would fill out the music in that particular way. At least that is what I've experienced at Burning Mountain, and that did make sense. The way that you're like dancing and the way that you have, how much energy you have throughout the day and that kind of stuff. It does make sense. The more you go to parties and festivals, the more you understand it. Exactly. It's something that you cannot really communicate just across with, you know, telling like, hey, this is 12 a.m. stuff, or this is, I don't know, daytime stuff. You have to feel how you would dance to specific versions of psytrance. Anyway, Alex tracks with The Unknown 144E. Let's see here. After this we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more tracks. I do think after this track I'm going to take another quick break. That way I'll have roughly done 3.5 hours of streaming, which should be okay schedule wise for me.
Into the unknown.
Actually seeing somebody implementing the trick that I talked about before, where the kick and bass is quieter when it's in the intro, is really nice to see. At least I think that is what's happening here. I feel like there's a little difference, maybe 1 or 2 dB in the volume of the kick and bass when it was playing in the intro versus when it's playing now. I could turn this one up a little bit. Give me a second. bit hard to tell here, but it looks like you have cleaned your baseline here. I would need to find a spot that is a little bit more empty, maybe. Overall, though, I like its tonality. Little detail melody there is really nice. Maybe its delay is going on for a little bit too long, though. Like, especially at this point, you wouldn't want to have it after that 8-bar one-shot. At the halfway point of the 8-bar one-shot, it should be faded out, basically. And then at that point, the 8-bar one-shot with its delay should probably take over. Some really interesting sound design there. Not really my style here, hard for me to comment on this one. Yeah, overall there's not really much to say with this track. I know Alex Tracks is a very competent producer. So when it comes to this stuff, it's harder to give feedback on tracks where I don't really hear, you know, anything that in particular stands out. So in those cases I tend to speak a lot less and just let the track play a lot more. I'm also, to be honest, just enjoying this track. This is really well done. Hello, Russian name that I'm unable to pronounce. The feedback queue is already closed for today when it comes to submitting your track, but if you submit now, you will be one of the first that will be played next Sunday for the next feedback stream. So that means if either you're here next Sunday, your turn is almost immediately. I think there's like 1 or 2 tracks that are already posted for next week Sunday. Otherwise, it would be easier for you to, if you want to watch back next Sunday's feedback stream, like later the recording of it, it's easier to find because you know that you will be at the beginning. I guess the main thing I would say that I hear in this track is that it feels like
Into the unknown.
there isn't really a pause in it. So often what you'll hear in these kind of a little bit more nighttime-y tracks is that there's a few moments where all of the synths cut out and just new stuff comes in all the way, right? In this case we have this new synth coming in, but it kind of fades in. What could be cool for some of the synths, some of the transitions, is to not have like a proper transition, but to almost have like an anti-transition, where instead of like slowly fading between one and another element, you get a sudden cut and then it moves into another element. I have a very good example of that. Maybe MindB is still here in the chat, but I have a collaboration with him that employs this technique at least in one spot, where we have one sound playing up until halfway in the fill, and then it cuts out, and then another sound plays up the last 2 beats of the fill, and then it goes into the next section basically. I'll play that track in the break that I'm going to do right after here, so that you get an idea of what I'm talking about. But that will be like a flanger synth. If you hear it, you'll know what I mean. But it's a good way to make sure that not every transition is the same, because you can have very interesting transitions, which this track definitely has. Like, they're all technically like correct and stuff like that. It's not like there's stuff that is standing out and stuff that is like, hey, that's a weird way of doing that. But it feels like it's all a little bit the same in the way that stuff transitions around. It just kind of fades in and then flows out again. And it could be nice to sometimes just cut and then move into something new. We did want to check cleanliness, but as you can see, fully clean here. Very well done. Also nice face alignment. Also, as I said before, the tonality is sounding very nice. Really well done. I really like that. Okay. Does it work if I MindB collab too? Just put the track on here? No, right? Yeah, no. That doesn't work. Okay, so I have to put the track on here and then put the analyzers here. And if I open up these, yes, there we are. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll get back into it, and then we have 5 more tracks to play. Yeah, perfect. Okay, see you guys in a bit, and then we'll continue. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this track, and hopefully keep a listen out for that one transition that I talked about before. It's somewhere in the middle area. It's somewhere over here when the rolling kick and bass is already playing. So there's going to be some stuff happening before it. It's a little bit later on in the track. But it is a really cool way of doing the transition a little bit differently.
So, let us dream big. Let us dream big. Let us dream big. Let us dream big.
The reality is, digital has allowed us to do whatever the heck we want. If you want to mimic any time period, you can do it. The tools are there.
Become one with the machine.
Again, timing-wise, very well done by me. Let me just quickly get back into the other analyzers. We don't need that anymore. Liquidy sounds, I like it. This track is very well done, but it is missing some important elements. Easy to remember? Question mark. Well, the track that was playing Mind Beat was our collaboration, so maybe did I not play the last export? Or maybe you were earlier on in the stream or something like that? I need to go see the results of election on TV. Be right back. Okay, yeah. I hope everything goes well in France. I hope that people didn't go too crazy with the party that is currently looking like it's winning. I'm not too much into politics, especially for countries that I don't live in. Like, I don't really care. But just from, I guess, what I would want, if you would ask my opinion, I wouldn't want... well, I was delayed from 15 minutes on the stream. Ah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I was like, is he not remembering our own track or something like that? Is that what he's trying to say? Or were there things missing from the export? If this may be not the final export of the project? Because I did already export the stems for mixing for this one. I just need to do the mix. And this will probably be scheduled for somewhere September, October. I'm looking to release it then. Just thinking about what we have in store before label-wise, but that's something that we'll have to figure out. So maybe I was like, oh, there's maybe like stuff missing from the export that I have over here. But I don't know if that is the case, because I've played this one many times before, so I thought I would have noticed there. So my comment on the track was not true. Yeah, it could be true, but not for this particular, not for the track that was playing, like for me, but for you, maybe. It was about the LX Tricks track. Okay. To be honest, I didn't really feel that. Thinking back now. Of course, it could be the case. Maybe you could say that, but from what I remember from the track, it was a... Would I say memorable? Not really memorable, but it's like you... it's not really unique, but it's just really well done. So maybe for that reason I like it. I maybe understand what you're saying, yeah. Either way, I'm going to continue here. Minimal/tech, minimal idea. Made the basic of sound design, focused on trying to build up interest, arrangement, feedback, ready for all feedback. Let's see. Prelocator arrangement. I really like that you're using those like little bleeps for the groove. I think they're maybe a little bit too loud. Like turn them down maybe 2-3 dB. But overall I like the idea of all of those bleeps and bloops in there. Some of these noise things there as well seem a little bit on the loud side. Some really cool sound design happening in here. I do think the kick and bass could stand out a bit more. They could have a bit more volume in here, so like turn everything else down a little bit. Maybe except the hats and the top drums. Like the mid-range synths, I would say, is a little bit too loud. I also wanted to check cleanliness of the kick and bass. It does seem like you're bleeding into it, but it doesn't really seem to affect the transient too much. So what I think you're doing here is you're sidechaining like this, right? Where it snaps down immediately on the sidechain. Whereas what I would propose you would do is sidechain like this, where it has a little bit of time, so that, for example, this last oscillation where it goes up again into the transient of the kick drum, it doesn't really need to be there, and you just create a little bit of space right before the kick hits, so that you basically get some free punch out of that. This is very loud. This is too loud. First of all, I would personally fade it in, volume-wise, and second of all, I would also just turn down the volume of it. I like how you marketed this, or you told us that this was like very minimal, yet everything that is happening is very complex. So I wouldn't call this maybe minimal. Maybe the baseline vibe, you could argue, is like a minimal vibe, and the hats on top, but all of the sound design that you're doing in the middle is very, very interesting and very complex. It's like it's almost like Tritech. A little bit boring here. You can see kind of what the problem is in terms of like the loudness of different elements. Your kick drum is quieter than your hat, even though the kick drum is the most important part of your track. So like balance wise between the elements, there's still some stuff that you would need to adjust. But overall, the vibe is definitely there. The arrangement is also working well. That's something that you specifically asked. There's nothing that really stands out as off from the arrangement. Like there's no weird structure being used here. Nice. I also fuck with this track. I like it. Cool stuff. I like it. As I said, need some work on the mix part. But basically, the production stage, I would say, is done. Maybe an outro, where it's just kick and bass and a few elements, so that you have an area where you can mix out the track as well, like you have with the intro, where you have that area where you can just mix it in. That would be nice. But other than that, I would just start focusing towards more the mixing and mastering stage of this track. Like I wouldn't continue adding more ideas into this, because you can't overcomplicate it, but I think that the balance between like the minimal vibe that you have going on with the hats and the top drums versus and the kick and bass, basically like the very minimal kick and bass. I think the bass is just like a clean sine wave, maybe one or two harmonics, something like that. But everything in between is very complex, and that is a really interesting way of doing it. That is not the way that I've normally heard like minimal tech being done. So that is really interesting. I really like that. Next up, we have Time Odyssey by Rebirth. I think we've heard this track a few times before on stream, but I don't remember exactly because he has posted quite a bunch of different tracks in the feedback stream over the years. He's been posting for like a year now, every once in a while, I think. But we'll just have to see. This is Time Odyssey. I think I've heard this before. Feels almost like we have some dark side kind of sound design in here. I don't remember Rebirth making dark side, but this feels like a dark side intro. Except that everything is sidechain. This sound comes out of nowhere and is way too loud in my opinion. Not a fan of the chord changes here, of the key changes. That's pretty strange. Not a fan of the large amount of punch that you have at the 500 to 200 region here on the kick and bass. Yeah, the synth that is playing now and the way that it's playing doesn't really work for me. The asset line goes out of sync for some reason. Stuff just randomly stops here for some reason. You have a really strange way of stereoizing your bassline, I think. Yeah, I don't like this arrangement, the way that you're just introducing and turning off elements at random points. I don't like that. Also, that stuff continues in fills. Everything is very washed out and very bright. You can see that you can basically see that there's no rhythm in here, right? In all of this stuff over here. There's just noise in here. Why did the hats turn off for a second there? There's a lot of strange decisions being made, the clap being every bar and having a massive reverb on it. I think you're just putting reverb on everything. There wasn't so much noise in that last segment that we heard, it's just too much reverb. Because even the clap here has reverb. Masking on, yeah, there's a lot going on with this track. This is still a person that is clearly like just starting out with music production. I said they were submitting for a year. I believe they started submitting when they were 4 months in their music writing journey or something like that. It is clear to me that you need to listen more to reference material. Like, there's some decisions made in here that just, from a structure, it's not like they're artistic decisions, they're just structurally wrong decisions, I would say. And in order to avoid that part, I would highly suggest that you listen to how psytrance is made a lot more. As I've suggested before, listen to professionally create music, or music that you aspire to create for half an hour, which is 3 psytrance tracks, 3-4 psytrance tracks. If you do that every day, you're gonna get better at making psytrance. Because here, structure-wise, stuff just randomly appears and disappears, and right here we heard a version of that. Everything is also way too reverberated and stuff like that. You're also playing melodies that don't work for psytrance. Like the melody that is playing doesn't excite the rhythm of the kick and bass in any way. I also don't know what happened there. I like the idea of the pitch going up, but it just going up like that and then it's suddenly the bass becoming shorter is a bit strange. Way too loud. High frequencies over there, that is going to blow everybody's ears when they hear that on a big system. Volume of this element continues to rise even after the kick and bass starts to play. Yeah, this is, I'm gonna be honest here, this is just not it. This is just not working for me. This isn't really psytrance. It feels like, melody-wise, you're taking something like progressive house and taking the melodies from there and trying to make that work for psytrance, which is just not working for me. Cool uses of format filters that I like, but other than that it feels really weird. Yeah, I agree with you. There's some cool sound design in here, like that thing that you just did there sounded really cool, but it just doesn't work in the place where you put it. Yeah, you need to do a lot more listening. Every day, half an hour at least, maybe an hour of listening to other people's music that you aspire to write, and then from there you'll be give it another year. If you religiously do that, give it a year, and then you'll have an ear for how music is actually supposed to sound like, that you're trying to make. Because I feel like if you compare your music in a playlist with the music that you're trying to write, I don't of course know exactly which reference material you're doing or you're using, but if you compare your music to the reference tracks, you must also feel like, hey, there's something off. My music isn't sounding exactly like what other people are doing. So you need to train yourself a lot more to get to that point where you would want to be, right? Listening and referencing is also important. Exactly. At the end of the day, even though it's a creative endeavor, creating music, there are, like, if you want to write music in a particular genre, there are rules to that genre that you would need to follow in order to kind of qualify to be in that genre. For the same way that if you want to write a metal track, you need a distorted guitar, right? That is just the sound of metal. Or if you want to write drum and bass, there's specific drum patterns that you use in order for it to be drum and bass. If you don't use that drum pattern, then by definition it's not drum and bass. And here it is the same way with the sound design, with the way that you're arranging it for the psytrance track. It's not enough to just have a psytrance kick and bass and just throw everything on there. To make, I really hate saying it like this, but proper psytrance, there's more to it than just kick and bass and I'll just throw anything on there that goes. Like the genre does have a functionality to it, right? The music is written for a particular type of people, for a particular type of dancing, for a particular type of substances that tend to be consumed there. And all of that stuff, you take that into account when you're actually writing the music. So that would be my only feedback. Spend a year from this day, whenever you see this, if you're in the stream here or if you're watching this feedback live back, spend a year time where every day on your system that you're producing on, you listen to some psytrance, you listen to the tracks that you really want your tracks to sound like, and then after that year, you're going to get a lot closer. I sometimes find it hard to express myself in a proper way when saying this. I don't want to come off as too negative when it comes to this stuff, because this is somebody that has taken the time to write a piece of music and to submit it to my feedback stream, and then for me to sit here and say it like this is like being so negative as I am now, that sometimes feels bad for me. But I do think it is sometimes necessary to really convey the ideas that I want to convey, and I think that part is more important. So it's not like it's a personal thing, or like I'm out to get you, or I'm purposely negative towards you. I just think that this is what you need to hear when it comes to the way that you're writing music now, and probably where you want to go with your music. Anyway, let's move on to the next track, Denon 4IK, also known as Catharsis with Endless Experience. Or the artist name is Endless Experience and the track name is Catharsis. This is like dark ambient, I feel. Sounds interesting. I love it. The kick could have a bit more of a higher transient in terms of frequency. The bassline could have a little bit more interest in the stereo field. I talked about that before. M Stereo Spread is probably the plugin that you want to use for that. I only laugh because of you saying substances being consumed, just to make it clear. I understand, but I did want to premise this with giving that disclaimer, I guess. Do you give feedback on different genres or specifically sidetracks? Well, if you even go back into this stream here, you'll see that I did do some tech house and stuff like that. But generally the rule is you can submit anything that you want. I jokingly sometimes say you could fart into a microphone and I would listen to it and have it show on the analyzers here. But really I don't care. I know I'm a sidetracks channel, but that doesn't limit the feedback that I give to purely sidetracks. One of the things that you're going to get if you give your kick drum a little bit of a higher transient in terms of frequency, maybe let's say up to like 7K or something like that, if you want to still have it a little bit darker of a transient, is that in these breakdowns where the kick and bass is playing, you can kind of filter it, as opposed to just having it filtered statically. You can automate that filter position, and that usually gives it a little bit more interest. I also feel like the bassline could be maybe 3-4 dB louder, because it's really quiet in comparison to the kick drum. Bit strange to switch up melody here. I would probably have, yeah, the fill in between, and then now have, you even have a different pattern over here. So maybe in that case, just use that second pattern for the whole drop, as opposed to having a melody for the first 4 or 8 bars or whatever it was, and then without any fill transitioning into something that is more of a rhythmical idea. Hard for me with the low BPM makes it feel more clubby. Well, this would be, I think, like early morning, like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock kind of stuff. When the sun is already out, but it's not fully bright yet, this is where I would see it. So, like, to give you a reference to when you would play it during the day, I guess that is where I would see it. I don't think this is like clubby per se. It's more the kind of, maybe even the kind of relaxed ambient that you would put late at night on the chill stage. Because it does have some dark side elements to it, right? As I said before, it's like dark side ambient, which is very interesting. It's not clubby, just the overall feel of the slow BPM. I do understand, as a high-tech producer, with very slow BPMs, maybe you feel like that. But overall, I really like that track. Sounded really cool. Really nice, unique idea. Maybe I didn't give too many details on it, feedback-wise. But hopefully, still some useful feedback could be gained from that. Next up, I should show this, is X BLR with just an ID. So no title yet, but let's see what you have in store here. Now this is clubby, at least to me. This is more like a hard dance kind of thing. For hard dance, what you'll often hear, by the way, is that there's like a very noisy transient to it. Right now it sounds like a very, very clicky transient. It's not like it's wrong, but it could be nice to have a bit more to the transient. Going a bit too far into the stereo width over here. It's a bit strange. You can see that there's a rhythm playing in here, but you cannot really see that back in here. Of course, these two graphs don't match up in terms of their speed. Right? Okay, so this is more of a hardstyle track. I thought this was more like hard tech. Your bass is very high in terms of its. Also the notes you're going in a B, so you cannot really go down an octave realistically. There are some strange decisions made in this track. The fact that there's a rhythm in here that you cannot really see in the waveform. Like now sometimes you can see it, but it feels like there's a wash throughout the whole track that's kind of covering up where synths are playing. You have a lot of synths that always, like that seem to have very little pauses in some places. Right over here, you can have some pauses in there to add a bit of extra rhythmical interest to it. And then the kick drum, it feels too high, but if you go an octave lower, it's going to be too low. So I would argue that this is written in the wrong key. Like the kick doesn't really have any power to it now. Especially because over here you do have a key that is a bit more powerful when it comes to the bass. Like G sharp is the proper key for a bass line, G sharp 0. That is between like the 60 Hz and the 40 Hz that you usually want to be. Like 60 Hz is the maximum. I would go from B0 to... You can probably get away with C sharp 0 here. But everything up here, that tends to be too high for most bass lines in like dance music. We really want that like darker, stronger bass. It doesn't really have any power the way that it's now. Yeah, just like somebody says in the chat. Also the mix balance was a little bit all over the place, and you had that effect, as I said, that it's a little bit washed out. I guess I should elaborate with saying the mix is all over the place. The balance between elements, you have to think about which element has the highest priority in the musical idea. In this case, it's the kick drum, undisputably, because that is the thing that we dance to. So the kick drum should be the loudest thing. The second thing is probably the lead line, and then a lot lower below that, like a significant amount lower below that in terms of priority in the track. It is about the stuff like the chords and the pads and all of that stuff. And I feel like that stuff you're really pushing up in priority, almost over the lead line and maybe even over the kick drum as well. You'll have to think about, okay, which element is the most important for the listener to listen to, and then mix accordingly. Epic feedback, man. Thanks a ton. Thanks, chat, as well. I'm glad I could help. I did see that somebody did submit over here. You can see the queue is closed for today, meaning that your track will be the first track that we'll listen to next week. Today, the last track that we're going to listen to is Cats Are Lucky over here by Cosmic Currents. So yeah, your track will have to wait until next week, and then it will be the first one that will play on the stream. So if next week you're unable to be here from the beginning, you can just watch back the start of the stream, and then you will be the first track that we're going to play. So it's like 5 minutes into the stream, we should be playing your track, something like that. Anyway, Cats Are Lucky. Let's have a listen. almost entirely mono and dry vocals here. So some reverb here would be very nice. Do yourself a favor and don't put hats in this kind of stuff. You're trying to build up the energy, and having the highest frequencies already in there doesn't really make a lot of sense when doing that. Do yourself another favor and resample your bass line. And don't saturate your kick drum. Your kick drum is actually distorting. Do you hear that? I like the stuff that you have in this segment a little bit more, or actually a lot more than the stuff that you had in the last segment. I really didn't want to comment on the last segment in isolation, but the rhythm of the main FM synth in the last synth, the way that it was arranged meant that you had 3 kick drums, where all 3 kick drums after each other had a note playing on them in the same way, which sounded a little bit off. In this case, I really like what you're doing with the chord things here, and then the FM stuff in between. This is a lot more interesting in terms of the rhythm that you're playing in between. So personally, I would arrange or structure synths more like you're doing over here. I was wondering what you meant with the mix is too wide at the start, how wide is too wide, and how would we gauge that? We use a stereo analyzer for that, and this is just an average of the stereo width. So up here is fully mono, up here is fully out of phase, or the left channel is the exact opposite of the right channel, meaning that there's no mono information, there's only stereo information. We want to stay on the mono side of the graph. We want to avoid, as an average of the whole track, going over 90 degrees phase shift between the left and the right channel. How can I send you a track SoundCloud link? Yes, !feedback will get you into my Discord, where you'll find the rules, where you can see everything that you need to know. Do keep in mind that for today the queue is already closed, so your track will be one of the first that we'll listen to next week on Sunday. So you can already submit. It will just not be for today, it will be for next week when you submit. And then it will be one of the first in the stream, so there's a benefit to submitting already in that you're early on, and if you're not able to catch the stream live, you can see the replay and you'll be early on in the replay, so it's easy to find on the replay. I like this synth. At this point it should probably pitch up as well, since the rest is speeding up. Your fill is a little bit loud in comparison to the actual drop part. You can probably come up also with a little bit of a more interesting bass melody than one that repeats every 2 beats. Oh, can I catch that? Yes. You see how the kick drum over here gets destroyed? Or the transient of this kick drum gets destroyed by the last kick drum that was playing right here. If you're doing rolls and stuff like that, you always want to make sure that you're fading out and stuff like that, and that you're not bleeding into the next thing. You can see that you have more issues like that, so you would need to resample your kick and bass. You would need to you need to do a lot of work to make sure that your kick and bass is actually clean enough to work on something like a festival system or a club system, because this will mean that if you see a waveform like this where the start of the kick drum is just completely destroyed like this and not a beautiful clean kick drum like it shows when you actually look at the sample itself, that means that it won't translate to a club system well. Would you consider this Goa trance? I think I would consider this just like the other Goa-ish track that we heard before, like a new Goa style, right? Because it feels like it, or it's clearly made with newer production techniques, right? With the phase shift on the bass line and all of that stuff, which is not something that we used to have in the like 70s, 80s, 90s when that kind of stuff was what was being made. So I would call it like new Goa. It's Goa structure, sounds, and arrangements and ideas combined with modern production techniques. New Goa, yeah, that's probably the best description that I would be able to give from this music. I think, yeah, that's it. That's the music for today. That means that I'm going to go here. I hope that you guys enjoyed the stream. I hope that the feedback was helpful, that you learned something, that you're able to improve your music with this. And as I said, next Sunday, we're going to be back. We're going to be doing the exact same thing. In the meantime, as always, I'm going to try to see if I can get at least one stream in. Maybe even two, depending on how busy I am. But it's realistically, it's either going to be no stream or one stream. But most likely no stream, because I also have to edit conversations with Projector, which tends to take up a lot of time. What I might end up doing is doing another editing stream, if you guys are interested in that. I know last time there weren't a lot of people, even though those are the streams where I get to chat the most, because I'm not like actively working on music, I'm just editing, and during the editing it's a little bit easier for me to just talk about other things and not feel the need to explain what I'm doing production wise, because that's normally when I'm like streaming production or I'm streaming me testing Bitwig or something like that. I feel like I need to explain what I'm doing, because at the end of the day I make educational content about music production, and maybe streaming something that isn't necessarily that allows me to just chill and chat a bit more with you guys. So I might end up doing an editing stream if I feel like it. It's gonna depend a little bit, but of course, as always, I'm going to push out the notification early so you guys will see when I'm going live, and you guys can set the little reminder thing with that YouTube feature. But yeah, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.